Okay, first of all, I just want to talk about the mics issue right now. Yeah, so I don't have the stand. This used to be my brother's mic. He doesn't know what a stand is. I think we left it before we moved, like 5 years ago. So for the rest of the video, I'm just gonna be holding this Yeti mic and hope it's not awkward. So yeah, 2021, hard year for a lot of us. I'd say 2020 surprisingly was a better year for me. But, regardless, something very important happened in 2021 for me. And that was I started reading again. Well, to be fair, it's 2020, in the end of 2020 that I started reading. But I'm just going to say it's 2021 because, I didn't even read that much. But what I want to do in this video, honestly, is just I want to talk about the books I read. Because, why not? It's New Year. Excuse me. Recovering from the Rona. First, I want to start this by an honorable mention. This is a book I read in the end of 2020. So by the time 2021 started, I had already finished it. And that was the first book I've read in years. And it's what made me, start liking to read and want to read again. And that book is Love from A to Z by S.K. Ali. So, Love from A to Z, great book. I was never really into romance. I was never into romance or, young adult love books. But this one hit the spot, man. And, totally biased here, but it has to do with the fact that it is by a Muslim writer, a Muslim woman writer. And it's just a perspective that I don't think many of us were exposed to before. And I think it's a perspective that many of us need, especially if you're a Muslim person. I think this book will make you feel make you feel warm inside, just because it deals with a lot of things that are very relatable, just that such as romance and dating and stuff like that. Things that I personally deal with and dealt with before, and it puts in perspective, right? And I can't help but notice how this book kind of feels like it was made for me and a lot of people like me. And for that, I just, I really recommend it. It deals with a lot of issues like Islamophobia, racism, and also privilege, which I wasn't expecting at all. I thought it was just going to be like a love story, right? But it deals with privilege, which was my favorite theme in the entire story. Overall, I think it's a great book. Like I said, I was never really into romance, but this one got me in. And the fact that it's made by a Muslim writer, definitely gave me a perspective that I never seen in books before, because a lot of these books I'm reading are not written by Muslims, and it definitely gives you you feel represented, and representation matters. Alright, so onto the books I actually read in 2021, and I'm just gonna go in order of the books I read. However, the last book is my favorite, so luck would have it that way. But let's start off by Animal Farm by George Orwell. I know this book was taught in schools, and I never read it in schools. I never read it for academia. I read it literally just because I was bored one day, and I was like, yo, I want to read. And man, it's about something. For those who don't know, this book is pretty much a very big allegory to the communist Russia and the USSR, Soviet Union, all that bread, right? And it just tells the story of the rise of the Soviet Union, and that's it. Like that's literally all it is. I walked in this book expecting, because of all the talk around it and everything, that it's gonna be, like a critique of communism, critique of of capitalism to some extent, right? However, that's not what I got. Sadly, that's not what I got, and I was kind of disappointed by that. The book was just. First of all, it's a children's book, right? And it's clearly written for kids. And you could tell because a lot of things are just very simplified, straight to the point. Never at any point you feel like there is a gray area that Orwell tries to commentate on, which is, not a very Orwell thing to do, especially given his older book, 1989. 1984, whoops, 1984. But at least in that book, although both books commentate on totalitarian regimes, this book specifically, Animal Farm, doesn't really, it just glances on it. It just ultimately just says, oh, being a totalitarian is bad. And that's it, kids. and this happened in history before, and this is a fictional retelling of that. And again, very disappointing, right? Because I expected it at least to have big criticisms of just the politics, besides just being, oh, the person in power is bad, and as a result, it's bad. And sadly, that's not how it comes off. By the time you finish the book, it comes off where the animal farm is pretty much at a worse place than it was in the beginning, and the reader is only left to feel like, oh, things only got worse. They should not have done the uprising or the revolution that they've done, which in itself is pretty much a really weak criticism of the revolution and the communist ideology that they went with, or socialist. I don't know what word is better to use here. And at the end of the day, just like I said, it just reads as an abridged retelling of history rather than a thematic explanation or an opinion piece about the difference between capitalism and communism. And that was very disappointing. I expected a lot from this book, especially from Orwell, and it just came very basic. And yeah, that's it for me. The next book, though, is a doozy, and that is No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of this book. This book, I don't. If there's any book that I would just straight up never recommend to anyone to read, it is No Longer Human. I think this is one of the worst books I've read, and not necessarily because of its writing style or bad story or anything. It's just the vibe you get from the book. It's very, very, very depressing, and I just can't recommend people to read this. You're gonna read it and you're only gonna feel worse. I'll tell you that right now. It's a very, very short story. It's let's see, it's like 170 pages, and 170 pages, you could finish the book in one day. That book took me a while to finish, because after like 10 pages of reading, I would have to put it down, because it's very heavy, and I don't think I could wish that on anybody. Basically, No Longer Human is it's the last book of Osamu Dazai, which is a very big Japanese literature author. And before I go any further, I just want to acknowledge that this is a very this book is very important in Japanese literature, and you understand why when you read it, right? It definitely tackles like that period of change that Japan went through post World War II, where with the government is still trying to be restructured a certain way, and all those like families and economies are trying to basically like land on, like, see what the future of Japan is going to be like. And you get to see this change Japan goes through through Dazai's eyes, but instead of seeing it through the eyes of someone who is quote unquote normal, you see it through someone who has severe depression and anxiety, and it's very mentally ill. And Dazai's entire thesis of this book is to highlight how people like him, people who are mentally unstable, who are clearly need help, are instead viewed as not human, as he feels. They're not viewed as normal people. They're not viewed useful to society, because they don't offer anything. They're just they're just dealing with their own issues. And at this time in Japan, that's not what the economy, that's not what the people wanted. And he feels like he's just being discarded by his family and his friends and everybody. And it's just a very sad reading, because it's very sad because, as a meta-analysis of the book, this is clearly written, the narrator, or the main character, when it's written in first person, it reads as if Dazai is telling us, like, he is writing himself within the character. And a lot of the events that happen in the book are based on his real life. So this book is really semi-autobiographical. And it's really sad to read knowing that, because he goes through a lot of pain. whether it's certain sexual assaults when he's a child, or um, just or towards the end of the book where he just doesn't he goes on like he becomes addicted to drugs, and just like his life spirals down even worse. The book never at one point you feel like things get better for this guy. I mean, at one point it does, but he takes it right away from you. But something like horrific happens to him, or rather, it happens to his wife, and he becomes very depressed with it, and he decides to just basically end his life at one point, but fails. Um, so yeah, don't recommend it because of how heavy it is. It is an interesting read, to say the least. However, I do want to state that this book also has issues. First of all, I understand the time period and the different culture of this book, since it is Japanese, but the book is very misogynistic, and it comes off, and I can't even use that as an excuse, the different culture gap and time period, just because the use of women in this book, even to his contemporaries, that's not how you use them, dude. Like, it's really bad. I mean, and to be fair, maybe that's the point he's trying to illustrate, because Dazai, or the character in the book, he himself isn't like a good person. He uses women all the time just for his gain. He basically, he's like a pest in their lives, and he always talks about how much they love him and how much sex he gets, right? But then he talks about how he doesn't see women as human, and he just doesn't. He sees them as less than human. They're like their own different alien kind, which is really fucked up, right? It's really fucked up, and it doesn't help you sympathizing with the guy at all, because you constantly feel like this guy just shits on everybody. I think someone explained it better once on YouTube, and they said that this book is pretty much the Japanese version of The Catcher in the Rye, Holden Caulfield. It's exactly that. This character is very despicable. He has a very nihilistic view on life, and at no point in the story you feel like this character has any redemption, or he does anything that makes you root for him. He's just generally very resentful, and it comes to a point. I understand it's a character choice, but to a point it becomes a detriment to that character, and the writing, because like I said, that misogyny wasn't really needed. He just goes in depth about like how much he hates women, really, and again, I don't know why he did that. And then at a certain point, the whole book dissolves into like a self-pity, where he starts feeling sorry for himself, and talks about how smart he is, and how he's very good at deceiving people, but he's always lonely and stuff. Like I said, he doesn't see himself as human. That's the whole point of the book. And overall, I think it's an interesting read. Puts you in a perspective of what Japan was like at a certain time and period of history. However, overall, I just don't recommend it. He is very sad, and you will be sad when you read the book, especially with the way it ends. It's one of the worst endings ever. Like, it's bad. Like, that last line, I'm just like, who, like, it stuck with me, especially with someone who is going through their own, mental gymnastics at home. So, it stuck with me, and I'm like, damn, this book, don't read that book if you're feeling depressed. You definitely shouldn't. This book might amplify it to 11, and I do not recommend that to anybody. But yeah, No Longer Human. Give it a chance if you're interested. It's very short. However, like I said, I really do not recommend it. Next up is The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. Oh boy. Okay, so short history that I want to mention real quick. So Alexandre Dumas is very special to me. Matter of fact, classic literature in general is very special. So, short history. I came to America when I was in 6th grade, right? Didn't know how to speak English, didn't know how to read English, didn't know how to do anything in English. My 6th grade history teacher was a very nice lady, and she had a lot of these old books called Great Illustrated Classics. I'm going to post a picture here if I could find one. And basically these books were very abridged versions of classic literature and it was always drawn. So every other page there was a drawing, an illustration of summarizing that page that you just read. So as someone who didn't understand English, these books were very easy for me to read and actually understand English through them, because I read a page, I have no idea what's going on, and then I look at the picture to the right, I get an idea, and I pick up some words along the way. So, read a lot of those books when I was a kid, a lot of those books, and I don't think I remember any of them. However, they do hold a special place in my heart because of it was an activity that I did when I first came to America when I didn't know English. Still trying to make friends. So it holds a special place in my heart. And the first one of those books was The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas. And the reason I got into it is because the cover page had like three people with swords. It looked very, heroic, very romantic. And I was just like, this is awesome. It reminded me of The Mask of Zorro, which is one of my favorite movies, especially at that time. So I was just like, I want to read this, right? So I read it and I loved it as a kid, not understanding really anything in it. And then because of that, Alexander Dumas, the writer, just became my favorite writer, or rather, he became very iconic for me, right? He's the first author I ever fully read in English. Little did I know, first of all, that guy was actually French. But years later, I'm in college, I have money, right? And I'm like, you know what? Let me read again, right? So I bought this book. I got this book. I'm very excited to read it. Really, very excited to, relive a moment of my childhood, right? And this book was everything but that. I really did not like this book. I learned the hard way that Dumas his novels were serialized, which means he had to write one chapter per paper in a newspaper in France, and he was getting paid by the line, which means Dumas used every excuse in the book to just prolong his chapters and prolong his story, and he would just have a lot of dialogue in them, so that like every line, like you like yes, no, it would be straightforward, just dialogue, and as a result, he would get paid more, and gotta respect the hustle, but when you put this story in a novel form, it just becomes very unreadable. It becomes very long for no reason. There's so many chapters in this book that are utterly useless, more useless than Naruto fillers. You know what I'm saying? Like it's really bad, which sucks because when Dumas starts writing the parts in the book that he really enjoys, the action, the politics, the spying, everything, it is so good. Like it is like Dumas is a really good writer for action, especially like a very old writer, right? Like this guy like was living at the same time as like Victor Hugo was alive, right? And these great literature classics were like happening at the time, and his books were just really good action. So I really appreciate that, and it's really, really good action. Like I remember reading this for the first time, and I'm just thinking, like the sword swashbuckling is top tier. Like I could picture it in my head. But regardless that, I really didn't like it because the characters in it. So I'm sure again it's because of the time period. Maybe things were okay back then with these things happening, but these characters are just assholes, man. Like they're not good. There's so many chapters where they're mean to their servants, they're stealing money, they're tricking old women into like giving them money. Like it's really bad, and they do this a lot, and they make fun of other people, they kill other people, and they pass it off as jokes, and I'm just like, this is horrific, man. Like those guys are just terrorizing France, and we're supposed to be rooting for them, and it's all written in the context of like those guys are heroics. They're the king's guards basically, but never at a point I just felt like I was rooting for them. I was always like, these guys stink. They do a lot of heinous acts, and at one point the main character D'Artagnan straight up just sexually assaults a woman, and it's played as like a good thing. It's played as in like, this woman deceived him, and he got back at her by raping her. Like it's not, and it just wasn't a good thing for me. And the second that happened, that was like halfway through the book, I just turned off I was just completely turned off to the rest of the book when it comes to rooting for his characters, because there's certain things I don't cross, and that was one of them. And I was just like, how am I supposed to root for this character? And surprisingly, though, at the same time, that character that he did this to became my favorite. She is actually the villain of the book. She's supposed to be the big bad of the book, the one person that is always making their lives harder. They're trying to kill her. She's a spy. She's like a femme fatale, probably one of the first few femme fatales ever in fiction. And her name is Milady, and she is so good. There is like a couple chapters where it's just her being imprisoned for like 5-6 chapters straight, and it's arguably the best part of the book. You get to see more about her. You get to see more of her past and why she became that way. Why she cunning and deceiving, and it's really awesome. This is how you like. It's a really good villain, and it made me realize also, minus what D'Artagnan did, that one specific act. If all the Musketeers were not good people, if they were just like villains, if they were written as villains, I would like them as well, because I'm not supposed to be rooting for them, and then you get this like, I'm really liking this villain. I'm liking their motivation. I really like their villain's motivation, and it just makes them alive. It makes them more than just a bad guy with a mustache. And she was just that. She was the perfect villain, and by the end of the story, I was actually rooting for her. And of course, when she gets defeated, I was actually like really pissed off. Like, I was upset. Like, I was like, this is not a good book, man. Well, not a good book. It's not a good story. Like, reading the story now, I just can't help but feel like maybe I would have liked this like 100 years ago. But right now, I just have more appreciation to the villain than the actual main characters, and I can't help but feel like this story would have been better if it was just Milady the entire time. And it sucks because, again, as a kid, I thought the story was about heroics and stuff, but again, the main characters were not really the best characters in the book. They were the worst, actually, doing the worst decisions, and it really sucked, spending so much time and effort reading this book. It's a big book, only to realize you come off disappointed. Now, the final book I want to talk about is The Humans by Matt Hage. I love this book. Okay, so I feel like I didn't like Musketeers, didn't like No Longer Human, and I didn't really like Animal Farm, so I feel like I just read a lot of books that I hated this year. But no, I read The Humans, and this was my favorite book. This book was actually recommended to me by a friend, and it's funny because the only book I truly loved that I read last year was the only book that I didn't like pick by myself. Someone else picked for me. So honestly, I might just ask my friends to recommend me books moving on. But this book was perfect. So the premise is an alien comes to Earth because a mathematician discovered a mathematical answer that pretty much like could evolve human technology and civilization like 1,000 years ahead. Like this mathematical discovery could basically like make humans like understand the universe. So the alien was sent to kill him and kill everybody who he told, because the aliens believe the humans are not ready yet because humans are destructive and blah blah blah. We know humans are bad story. So this alien comes in, basically Terminator style, impersonates him, kills him, takes his position, and now he's trying to find everybody who he is related to or like close to see if they know, and kills them all. That's his mission. And the book is just fish out of water kind of story where he's trying to learn about humans. He is very disgusted about humans. He doesn't like humans at all, and it's straight in first person from the perspective of the alien, and the whole story he takes place of that mathematician. He takes his place, and then he lives his life basically trying to get close to people he's close with to kill them. And along the way, he realizes, humans aren't so bad. And that's all I'm gonna say about the book. It is really, really good. It is dark humor, really good. It's really funny. I haven't laughed so loud at books like this in a long time, and this book does that for me. I laughed so much, and a lot of the comedy comes from the, like I said, fish out of water dynamic, where he's like, oh, humans are weird, man. Like, why do they buy magazines where it tells them how to be good at sex? Like, isn't this supposed to be something biological? One of the things that like he mentions, or he's very disgusted by the human nose or the human ear. He's like, this is weird. Why do humans have noses? Like, it's very disgusting. And it's a lot of stuff like that, but also just his awkward like conversations with people. It's really funny. It's really well written. It's and it just really, in the end of the book, you realize, it's not bad being human, man. In very like where almost every, like, compared to No Longer Human, which is funny. My friend recommended me that book because I told her about No Longer Human, and she said, "Oh well, I have a book that has humans in the title. I think you'd like." But I appreciated this book a lot, and even beyond the like just the quirky math in it, like the writer doesn't spend time explaining math or anything. He does every MacGuffin he has in a story to like advance the plot forward. He does a good job explaining what it is, and that's it. He doesn't dwell on it. But as someone who has a physics degree and a minor in math, I couldn't help but like appreciate like the history and just like the lore of human history behind this mathematical situation that the guy's trying to solve. Like the writer could have easily just made up his own thing about like some weird math thing, but this is real. Like the Raman hypothesis is something that we have yet to solve, and a lot of mathematicians do believe that like if we solve it, we could learn a lot about math and advance ourselves. So I appreciate him going the extra mile to like have real world stories in there, and but in general, it's just a great book. Really good romance. Really good. Just it's such a good book. I don't want to talk about it much, but I mean I want to talk about it a lot. But I don't want to spoil anything. I think everybody should read this book. It's really good, and like I said, in a world where a lot of our stories are nihilistic and very, we definitely live in an age where like we like dark stories and sad stories, they make us feel, like something. This book will make you feel happy, and I think we much need that in our lives right now. And I think everyone should read it. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I am thinking about rereading it soon. Honestly, it is such a good time. It is a very quick read. It's only like 300 pages. You could read it all literally in one sitting. It's a really good book. It's very fast paced. The writing is great. Everything about the book is great. The pacing is great. The characters are great. Just, the motivation is great. You feel bad. You feel happy. You want to cry. You want to laugh. It's such a great story, and I think everyone should read it. So that is The Humans. These are the books I read in 2021 when I started reading again, and I'm really happy about it, man. I'm really happy I started reading again. It's definitely an old hobby that I had, and I'm really happy to happen to me again. What I'm doing now, I'm currently reading The Count of Monte Cristo, again by Alexander Dumas. It's a big fucking book. I'm currently 200 pages in, and that's still basically the beginning. I'm also reading Dune, which it's all the way on my bookshelf right now. I'm taking a break from it. I was gonna read it before the movie comes out because I really like Timothée Chalamet, but I'll get to it eventually. Started reading comic books again. Quick thing I just want to say: if you have not read, if you read comic books or you want to get into comic books, you should read Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky. I can't say his name correctly. Great story. It's one of the best comic books I've ever read. It is a very great understanding of Daredevil and Matthew Murdock and who the character is, and the writer takes a very good angle about approaching Daredevil from and focusing on his religious aspect of, and focuses on like the law and how Daredevil like basically contributes to like and how superheroes contribute to the prison industrial complex, which is insane. Like you never seen that at all. Like Spider-Man arrests someone and that's the end of the story. This story devolves into like, well, what happens to that criminal and what do they go through in the prison, and it deals like, and it just addresses like the crime and punishment aspect of superheroes, and I love that so much. So you should definitely read that run. It's great. Been reading Spider-Man again by Nick Spencer. I know his run just ended, but I'm really enjoying it so far. Nowhere as good as Daredevil, but Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, so I'm just happy to read him again. And yeah, so 2022, hopefully a better year for all of us. Hopefully all of us, hopefully COVID is gone, but we know that's not going to happen because, other things. But, hopefully things get better for all of us. I'm really excited for the new year. I hope things are better. 2021 was very tough. But, it's behind me now. It's past me. And, before you leave, if you're still here, check out my other video where I talked about Spider-Man. I made that in the end of last year. Great movie, and I talked about why I like it, and or rather, I talked about how it fixed a really bad comic book issue. But check that video. I'm having fun with these, and maybe I'll see you guys in the next time. Thank you. Have a good day.